Welcome everyone. Welcome to our PDA DACH webinar today. We're talking about opportunities and challenges for startups, and this webinar will be presented by Women in Life Science. My name is Antonio, and I'm going to be your host today. We're hosting this webinar in a hybrid session, so we have you visit us online, and we're here in Palm Springs, California, as part of the PDA, where you can have a few people in the room. I want to start with giving you a quick introduction of your presenters today. So we have Lara Denk, who's a master's student in economics from the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. Bianca Borish, she's a CEO at PSM, a German CDMO. And Svetlana Kiseleva, who is CPO and co-founder of Player SA, a Swiss tech company focusing on particle monitoring systems. So quick run through the agenda. I'm going to have 1 or 2 minutes spent on an introduction about the PDA, and we'll then hand it right over to our first presenter. Our first presenter is Lara, and she's going to run us through cross-country perspectives on bio and IT innovation. And she's actually going to compare the US versus Germany, so how they compare against each other. Then Bianca is going to pick it up from there to explain how to set up a new one-stop shop CDMO service from API to sterile pharmaceutical products. And Svetlana is going to wrap this session up with an overview of innovative technologies in a manufacturing environment for sterile medicines, specifically focusing on biofluorescent particle counters. At the end of the webinar, we planned for a Q&A session. I want to highlight that you can ask or raise questions throughout the duration of the webinar whenever they come up. You will find, if you look at the menu bar of your Microsoft Teams application, there is a button that says Q&A. If you hit that button, you will see a mask where you can enter your questions. You can enter those questions at any time and post them, and you will also be able to see questions posted by other participants. If you look at those questions, on the left-hand corner, there is a little arrow. You can hit this arrow to actively cast a vote and prioritize questions that you are also interested in. The more votes we get for a single question, the higher it will be ranked, and we will prioritize the questions with the most votes at the beginning of the Q&A session. So make sure that you choose the questions that you feel most interested in, so we have them covered for you at the beginning of the Q&A. All right, just a quick introduction about PDA. I don't need to explain this to the people in the room. We are at the PDA event, so they will know. But some of you online are maybe not PDA members, so I'll just give you a quick overview. PDA is a global community that actually connects pharmaceutical professionals from across the industry, across the globe. And it provides a lot of volunteer opportunities to actually drive discussions and innovations in the team. The PDA is member-led, however, it is also mission-driven, and the mission is quite easy. We want to advance pharma, manufacturing, science, and regulations just to be able to better serve our patients. And we are hosting this event today as the PDA DACH chapter, which is one of 24 regional branches of the PDA, and the DACH chapter focuses on Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Our vision is to promote open knowledge exchange in the industry by connecting manufacturers, suppliers, and regulatory authorities. And what we want to do is we want to strengthen the DACH region as an industry hub. We founded this chapter last year, and we are really excited to bring content to you, to bring information to you. And we have more information. If you're interested to learn more about the DACH chapter, feel free to follow one of those links you see on the screen, or reach out to us by email or approach us directly. We'll be happy to touch base with you.
So hello everyone, and a very warm welcome from me as well. I'm Lara Denk, and I'm genuinely happy to see you all here today. I hope you're feeling good and are ready for some insights into the world of venture capital. Let me tell you a bit about my background. I did my bachelor's degree in business and economics at the Goethe University in Frankfurt, and now I'm pursuing my master's in international business at the LMU in Munich. Before my studies, I trained as a bank clerk And over the years, I took a few additional courses. One in entrepreneurship in emerging economies really stuck with me. Gradually, my interest in startup and innovation kept growing. I find it fascinating how venture capital helps build new companies and drive economic transformation. That's why I'm excited to share some of my thoughts and findings with you today. What first sparked my interest in this topic was something pretty simple: social media. I kept seeing stories of rapid growing companies and breakthrough innovations, which made me curious about why the startup scene seems so much more dynamic in the US compared to Germany. As part of my bachelor thesis, this motivated me to take a closer look on how regulatory and cultural differences shape venture capital markets, specifically in Germany and the United States. Today, I'd like to share with you the major findings of that research, where I compared academic literature and analyzed data from major sources like the German BVK and the National Venture Capital Association in the United States. My aim was to show how investment volumes, tax incentives, labor regulation, and even personality traits and cultural attitudes towards entrepreneurship differ between these two countries. I'll also briefly talk about Switzerland when talking about the cultural differences, since one of the startups we'll hear from today is based there. Let me begin by explaining why biotech and IT played a central role in my thesis. These two areas really stood out to me because they are both strongly driven by innovation and fast technological process. They also tend to need quite a lot of funding early on, especially to cover research and development or to bring together a team with the right expertise. That's exactly why they attract a big share of venture capital in both the US and Germany. So they seemed like the perfect example to take a closer look at how different the startup ecosystem in these two countries actually work. In the data I worked with for my thesis, I saw that although both sectors face similar challenges, the way they grow and develop can look completely different depending on where the startup is based. So the big question for me was, what are the reasons behind this? Why do biotech and IT startups flourish so differently in the US compared to Germany? When we look at the overall volume of venture capital investments, it becomes clear that the United States consistently invests a much higher share of its GDP into startups than Germany does. One major reason for that is simply the size of the US market. The country has a population of around 340 million people, and more importantly, a business culture that has embraced venture capital for decades. This mindset already started to take off with the rise of Silicon Valley in the mid-20th century and has continued to shape how invention is funded in the US ever since. Sure, Germany has strong hubs like Munich and Berlin as well, but on a smaller scale. So you can already get a sense of the difference if you take a look at the chart on the slides, where you can clearly see that the US constantly invests way higher, way much more money than Germany does. A core reason behind these investment patterns is the regulatory and tax framework, particularly when it comes to tax incentives and the labor market flexibility. The US offers more flexibility and stronger incentives, especially for long-term investments. Capital gains are often taxed at lower rates, and there are several benefits for startup investors, like the qualified small business stock exemption. There are also big differences at the state level. For example, Florida doesn't tax capital gains at all, while California, on the other hand, the rates can go up to 13.3%. So depending on where investors are based, they can really optimize their tax strategy. Also, net operating loss provisions are more flexible, allowing startups to carry losses forward or backward to offset future profits. Germany takes a more centralized approach, with flat taxation and less room for optimization. Germany also has programs like the Invest Subsidy and the High-Tech Gründerfonds, which are designed to support startup investments, but overall these efforts are much smaller in scale compared to what's available in the United States. So while Germany's system is more predictable and consistent, it lacks the flexibility and depth of incentives that characterize the US model. Oops, I think I went a bit too far. The labor market regulations are another factor. In the US, at-will employment lets startups hire and let go of employees fairly easily without going through a lot of bureaucracy. For venture capitalists, that's often seen as a big plus. It gives startups the flexibility to grow quickly or to downsize or change direction if things don't go as planned. It basically reduces the risk if a project fails or if a company needs to pivot to a new business model. Of course, the downside is that this can lead to higher employee turnover. But for many fast-growing VC-backed companies, that's considered an acceptable trade-off in exchange for speed and adaptability. Now, if we compare that to Germany, the picture looks very different. Labor laws in Germany are much stricter, especially when it comes to firing employees. This makes it harder and often more expensive for startups to reduce their workforce when funding becomes tight or revenues drop. On the upside, though, this kind of system tends to create more stable teams. Employees often stay longer and are more loyal, which can be a real advantage in areas like biotech or complex software development, where long-term expertise really matters. So, how does all of this actually affect startups in the biotech and IT sector? Well, both of these industries are highly dynamic. Startups often need to grow fast, put together strong teams in a short amount of time, and be able to adapt quickly when things change. In that context, the flexibility of the US labor market can really help. It gives founders and investors the freedom to scale up and shift direction without too much friction. But growth isn't everything, especially in fields like biotech or software development. Continuity and long-term collaboration play a huge role. Investors also look at how stable a team is, because that can mean more in-depth knowledge, better teamwork, and fewer disruptions. That's where Germany's system has its strength. Even though the regulation makes things a bit more tricky, they can also help build loyalty and trust within the team, which can be a real advantage in the long run. Now let's move on to the topic of intellectual property, something that plays a huge role in both biotech and IT startups. In biotech, patents often form the core of a company's entire business model, especially when it comes to protecting drug candidates or technologies. And in the IT sector, things like source codes, algorithm, trademarks, or even just protecting the brand itself can be the key to staying competitive. When we compare the US and Germany, there are some important differences in how IP is handled. In the US, there is a 12-month grants period after public disclosure, which means founders can talk to investors, share details at conferences, or even publish research and still have a full year to file a patent. That creates more flexibility and encourage early cooperations, which can be a real advantage in fast-paced environments. Germany takes a stricter approach. Here, novelty is key. Once something is publicly disclosed, it usually can't be patented anymore. That means founders have to be more cautious about what they share and when. On the flip side, German patents are known for their technical depth and precision. They tend to signal high quality, which can be a big plus, especially for biotech startups that are in it for the long run and looking to build serious credibility. Let's now take a look at exit strategies, because in the end, that's how venture capitalists realize their returns. In the US, IPOs are common and can be incredibly lucrative thanks to the dynamic and liquid capital markets. That means startups there have a higher chance of achieving strong valuations when they go public. When they go public. Regulations are also a bit more liberal with less high barriers than in Europe. On top of that, the US simply has more high growth startups, especially in tech and biotech, which makes the IPO path much more attractive. You can see that in the chart on the right. In 2021, IPO values in the US nearly reached 500 billion euros in total for venture-backed companies. That's a massive number and shows how much capital is circulating in these markets. Now let's compare that to Germany, where IPOs are far less common. Instead, we see many more mergers and acquisitions. So companies are either bought by larger firms or merge with them. There are some good reasons for that. First of all, M&A deals are usually quicker to complete and involve less public disclosure, which makes them easier and less risky from the founder's perspective. Also, if a startup gets acquired by a strategic partner, its technology can continue to develop under a bigger, more established company. Another factor is regulation. In Germany, IPOs are subject to stricter rules under the BaFin and the European frameworks. They ensure fairness and integrity, but also add complexity and cost to the process. So for many German founders and investors, M&A simply makes more sense. Now, beyond all the regulatory aspects we've talked about, there's another layer that plays a huge role in shaping startups and the startup behavior, and that is culture. In my research, I used Hofstede's culture dimensions to better understand how countries differ in their approach to risk and failure. Risk tolerance in general is an important factor in the venture capital markets because VC funds are riskier than the general market itself. Therefore, fostering a culture that embraces risk-taking is essential to maintaining a growing and successful VC market. And if we take a look at the chart here, there are a few key differences that stand out. Let's start with uncertainty avoidance. The US scores relatively low here, which means people are more comfortable with taking risks and dealing with uncertainty. In Germany, on the other hand, the score is notably higher, suggesting that people tend to prefer structure, planning, and also avoiding surprises. That mindset naturally influences how founders build their startups, often more cautiously and with fallback options like, for example, starting out only part-time. Next is long-term orientation. Germany scores very high, which reflects a strong focus on future goals, sustainability, and just long-term success. The US, in contrast, scores quite low, meaning the culture leans more towards short-term wins and fast returns. This can influence how startups scale and how quickly investors expect results. Interestingly, this difference is also linked to language and how people perceive time. In English, the present and the future are more clearly separated in the way people speak, which can make future outcomes feel more distant. Because of that, people tend to focus more on the immediate results. In Germany, the language connects present and future more closely, which encourage more long-term planning. Then we have individualism. The US ranks very high here, meaning independence, personal achievements, and standing out are highly valued. Germany and Switzerland are still fairly individualistic, but slightly less so. In highly individualistic societies, like in the United States, entrepreneurs are more likely to take bold, innovative risks driven by a desire for personal success and societal recognition. And finally, there's indulgence. The US score is high, meaning there's a cultural tendency to enjoy life and take chances. Germany scores lower, showing a more restrained mindset. Switzerland, though usually culturally close to Germany, is actually more aligned with the US in this category, possibly because of its strong service culture and high living standards, which create a slightly more pleasure and experience-oriented mindset. Now, what does that all mean in practice? Well, in the US, failure is often seen as a learning opportunity. As part of a journey, it's not unusual for founders to launch multiple ventures, some of which don't work out and still be taken seriously by investors. In Germany, although the mindset is slowly changing, failure still carries more stigma. That makes people more careful. Many founders choose to start out part-time, as I've said before, while keeping a stable job just to minimize risk. So culture doesn't just shape the attitudes, it also directly influences how people build businesses and how willing they are to take risks. 1 second. Oops. Yes. So when looking at the educational background of founders, we see some pretty clear differences between Germany and the US. In Germany, it's quite common for founders to have advanced degrees like a master's or even a PhD. So founding a startup often comes after a long academic or professional journey. In the US, things tend to be a bit more flexible. It's not unusual to see founders who didn't finish college or who never went at all, but still went on to build successful companies. If we take a look at the graphs here, we can see that in the US, people from all educational backgrounds, but mostly with degrees of less than high school or high school graduates, are relatively active in founding startups. In Germany, by contrast, the number goes up significantly the higher the level of education is. Especially are many founders among college graduates. So while Germany produces many high qualified science and researchers, the US startup culture is often more about speed, risk-taking, and acting on a good idea. Interestingly, during my literature review, I found out that many US entrepreneurs don't start their business out of necessity, as one might expect given the lower average level of formal education, but rather out of opportunity. This finding ties back to how risk is perceived in the US and how willing people are to actually take that risk. So, to wrap things up, when we look at the big picture, it's clear that the US still leads globally when it comes to large-scale venture capital investments. There are a few reasons for that, as I've mentioned during my presentation. The deep and dynamic capital markets, more flexible tax and labor regulation, a culture that's more comfortable with risk, and strong exit opportunities. And we see the results of that clearly. Just take a look at the number of unicorns, the startups valued at over $1 billion. In the US, there are more than 650 of them, and in Germany, they're only around 30. That alone gives us an idea of how different the scale and pace of growth can be. Germany, while behind in pure numbers, can be an excellent place for a more methodological, scientifically driven approach. It has strong university networks, technical enterprise, and a government increasingly interested in supporting entrepreneurship. For founders who are aiming for sustainable, long-term growth and who value precision and structure, Germany can actually offer a really appealing environment. To give you concrete examples of successful European startups, I'd like to highlight PSM and Player. PSM is a German biotech company specialized in high-end pharmaceutical services. They play a key role in supporting the development and production of advanced therapies. Player, based in Switzerland, focuses on environmental data and air monitoring, combining advanced tech with real-time analytics to improve health and safety. As you already have heard in the introduction, the CEOs of both companies are here with us today to share their personal experiences in the startup markets. So without any further ado, I'll hand things over to the CEO of PSM, Bianca Bohrer.
I'll just share my screen. Thank you very much, Lara, for the nice introduction and the very interesting presentation. So a lot of things I didn't know exactly, but it absolutely makes sense. So thank you for that, and a warm welcome to the participants in the US. And yeah, I just start. Can you see my screen? Tonio isn't there, hopefully.
Yes, it's good.
Okay, perfect. So I want to talk about how to build a new CDMO and what were the biggest hurdles regarding that. So just for the... Okay. So my name is Bianca Bohrer, and as Lara already said, I'm CEO of PSM. I'm a pharmaceutical engineer, and I've worked right now approximately 18 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I've also been head of production as well as head of quality control and the co-author of different quality chapters in some books. We had another company, just a little bit for the background. We had another company which also had a manufacturing license for very small batches. So we get a lot of questions there. And what I have to mention also is that we are private owned. So for us, fortunately, there was no need to look for investors like Lara said in her presentation. So we had it a little bit easier, but we get a lot of questions from customers. Could you produce larger batches and so on? And therefore, we come with the idea to found a new company under a new name. And therefore, we for sure had to do at first the market analysis. So we just looked at the areas where we want to produce or where it makes sense. We have another company in our consortium which also is specialized on biopharmaceuticals. In that case, it's the wholesaler of that, and the distributor said that, so that niche was of our interest because it's a high value area, and therefore we decided to go with that. So in Germany, the market of the biopharmaceuticals are approximately 80 billion, worldwide 160 billion. There's a continuous growth for at least 8%, 7 to 11%. There's the new approvals, most of the new approvals come from that area, and there are 672 new products in the pipeline for the biopharmaceutical drugs. So for us, it was clear to go with that area, with the biopharmaceutical area, where we can see and set our future. So we started with the planning phase. As I mentioned, we had private investors, so no need to look for money, but for sure we have to plan how much we need. We started with the size of the building and technical plans there around. We thought about how many personnel we need there, in which area, quality control, production itself, technicians, and so on. We also thought about, because it's a new company, how we can get known. So we looked for possible cooperations with the machine builders, for example. We had a deeper thought into our strategic techniques. So it was clear that we also offer the clinical batches, so the small production, coming further on to the large scale production. Therefore, we choose the same technique for the transfer, so that it makes it easier and is more cost efficient. The announcement of the PSM as a pharma CDO was also a very big topic at the beginning. We evaluate the financial invest. So we thought about how many costs we should have in total. So what we did here is we invested approximately 45 millions, and the planning costs of that were approximately 2%. That's only because we don't have a general contractor. So I planned it together with another engineer and our QPs. So the planning costs in our case were very low. Normally they're much higher. We had approximately 10% planned for the building costs. We had the equipment cost, which is for sure the highest amount. We also had the cost for the infrastructure, the air handling units, the piping, and so on, that we planned with 25% of the whole amount of money that we had. And the costs for the introduction of a GMP system, we planned with 30%. So these were the first ideas of the building. I just have to laugh because on the next slide you see how it all ended. So we thought about a space that we need for the technical area. We discussed the personnel and material flow. I have to say we started the thinking of the building when in 2020, so there was the draft versions of the new Annex 1. Therefore, we had the possibility to have a deeper look inside and fulfill all the requirements. And this is just to say that these were the first ideas, and this is how it ends. So totally different building. You can see here the space for our quality control in the upper area was 1,000 square meter above the office space. We had the technical area right here with the air handling units. A part of them are above the production itself in the technical area. We serve the laboratory as well as the production, both from that technical area. On the left-hand side, you can see our production building with the API production and the production for the sterile products, the compounding rooms and everything. We had clean room space, approximately 1,500 square meter from D till A in the filling and aseptic filling lines. So all is out of one single source. That was the idea, so that our customers only have one person to connect with and to talk with, and that makes the communication a little bit faster and easier. So we offer the API manufacturing. We have the process and method and product development, analytical services. Then we offer the production for the clinical phases for small batches. That is what we also did in the last company. We had the commercial batches for aseptic fill and finish, the visual inspection, the secondary packaging, the GMP storage, as well as the GDP transport. So all out of one hand. This is how it looks right now. So we have the area where we do the clinical supply and the very, very small batches with the semi-automated systems. We have for our large commercial production, the ORAPS system in a class B area, and and we have the worldwide first gloveless isolator at our site, which is a joint venture with the companies Groninger, Scan, and a layer from Christ. So that was one of the very important things that we had this cooperation. So a lot of customers were at our site to have a look at the machine in the building phase, so we get known with this special cooperation. Our challenges: the market is based on trust. So when you don't know company, the trust is a very important thing. So you You had to get assured that the personnel you had is well known in all the GMP areas. We had a lot of QPs for our size. We have 4 QPs right now, which is pretty much for a total personnel of 100 person. The highest barriers to the market entry is the GMP approval. So in our area, it's also a little bit more complicated because we have only very small inspectorate with 2 people, where one is leaving at the middle of this year, so they are looking for somebody new, but that also seems not to be that easy. So it's very hard to connect with them, to get them on site, and that took a really, really long time. So fortunately, we had our marketing authorization for most of the companies, so that finally went well, but that took a lot of time. Pharmaceuticals projects take a very, very long time. So from the beginning and the first words spoken in between the 2 companies till you have your signed contract, at least 1 year is going by. So that also took very, very long. The GMP overhead very high regardless to the batch sizes. So when you are specialized in the high value drug, normally that goes with a RoboCell, with our specialized gloveless isolator. It's very safe. There's less product loss, so it's a very good equipment. But the batch sizes are not that big, because it makes sense that you get the patient safety on the first level, so the machine does not work that fast, so that the load of particles is as less as possible. But yeah, small batches, very, very high value drugs are only possible for that area. That's the same with the next point, and there is a higher capital needed, because you have a lot of time till you come in the profit zone, for sure, because you have to have a lot of personnel. You are not allowed to produce for years, for at least 1 year, when you have the contracts with your customer. So far so good. You have your GMP license also. You have to fill the first batches, and you have to wait for the shelf life. So at least 6, normally 12 months for their authorization, so that they have the possibility to enter the market right now. So a very, very long time till that is possible, and therefore it takes for sure a long time to get into the profit zone. And as I mentioned, 100 persons have to be paid every month, so it's a lot of money needed for that. What we did good so far, I think, because we are known very well regarding a new company, and the marketing authorization is not that old. We were at a lot of conferences. We did presentation worldwide, as you can see, a lot of them at the PDA. We were at fairs like the CPHI, and we also were with the Swiss Medic Training. So we had the possibility to show the new line, the gloveless isolator, the RoboCell. So that was really important for us to get known in the very early steps. This is the bird view from our company. So this is the laboratory, the technical area, and the production. Secondary packaging is here. That is our new storage area, what we build right now, and that is the wholesaler. So this is all in our this is the distribution company. This is all in our consortium. How it ended, the planning versus the reality. So the costs increased approximately 50%, which is not that much regarding the total value of the project itself. The construction phase took nearly 6 months longer than expected. We had 2 years and we wanted to build it up in 1.5 years. So, but that would have been very fast. So we couldn't reach that goal anyway. The goals that we reached so far is that we had the permission for the quality control in time. So that was planned for 2023, and we also received that. For the second permission for the small batches as well as the clinical batches, we had 1 year delay due to the problem with the inspectorate. So they couldn't come in that month. It took us a lot of time. And we had also the first customer for both of our lines. So also for the clinical, for the clinical batches, they are already running, and we also have the first customers for the flex fill, so the ORAPS line, as well as the RoboCell, the isolator. That we also fulfilled that goal. So now I hand over to Svetlana for her part of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Bianca. Do you see my screen? Everything works?
Yes.
Perfect. So I will talk about environmental monitoring and what are the innovative technologies to digitalize that. So I will cover a bit practical side of what Lara presented and application to what Bianca presented to mentioned, like gloveless isolators, how we can monitor environmental monitoring in a more digitalized way, in a more to make faster batch releases. So I talk about biofluorescent particle counters. A bit of my background: I'm a physicist. First of all, I did my PhD at the University of Geneva, Switzerland, in laser spectroscopy. And I worked with different proteins, bacteria, fungi to apply laser spectroscopy tools based on fluorescence in order to identify them. And 11 years ago, I co-founded PLAIR, which was initially specializing in developing of instruments to detect airborne pathogens in the air. And today I'm responsible for product sales and marketing. I mentioned environmental monitoring. So in the sterile manufacturing, we have to do the environmental monitoring. And the challenges what we see is, first of all, is traditional methods. I just remind what are the traditional methods for environmental monitoring. It's growth-based, first of all. And you know better than me, if you work in the pharmaceutical industry, there are active air samplers or set plates. And these are wonderful techniques. So of course, it's established methods. So they are they produced CFU, colony forming units, and they are so these are the units accepted by GMP bodies, by the pharmacopoeia. And however, there are challenges. These methods are labor intensive. So you need to wait at least a few days in order to get results. Also, depending on bacteria or spores, it may take even weeks. And also, you cannot have information about all microorganisms present in the air. That's because you can only have information on the cultural microorganisms, but they are established methods. Another challenges what we see and other opportunities is alternative rapid microbiological methods. And rapid microbiological methods currently are, I think, they are very popular, and authorities forcing pharmaceutical industry also to try them and to implement into the production. And one of them is biofluorescence particle counter. So what is the biofluorescent particle counters? First of all, it's like a traditional particle counters based on fluorescence, and they measure viable particles in real time continuously. So they have a lot of benefits. However, there are some disadvantages and challenges in order to use them. Not all biofluorescence particles, of course, are the same. They may have some false positives. They may have particle losses in tubing. It's important to decontaminate them. And in order to use them in pharmaceutical production, environmental monitoring, they have to be validated. and they have users need to show the equivalency of using of these alternative methods with traditionals. And so there are no perfect tool. So we see that in traditional methods, there are some advantages and disadvantages, and with the current biofluorescent particle counters, for example, there are advantages and disadvantages. So we saw this opportunity and we wanted to make better. And what we did, so our company was initially focused on development of laser sensing techniques in order to detect airborne microbes in the air. And what we did, we innovated in optical analysis and traditional classical air sampling. So this is just an example of our techniques that we developed. So this, for example, instrument has been marketed a year ago, so it's now currently on sale. And this instrument, for example, it allows to monitor viable particles in real time, like bacteria, like fungal spores, and in order to replace all traditional legacy methods like particle counters and traditional air sampling techniques. So I don't want to talk about techniques more, but just to give an example what these new technologies and what this new generation of biofluorescent particle counters can do. So it's like traditional particle counters to measure total particle counts, but at the same time they can measure viable particle counts and also sample these particles on traditional agar plates. So basically we have in real time all the information, and we can compare viable particle counts and traditional colony forming units, providing better equivalency, understanding what happens in the air. And so we see that so these instruments so will be and already are implementing in the aseptic filling lines. And for example, as the current trends, gloveless isolators. And the idea of using them is that they produce continuous and real-time data. So you don't want to wait for days until you get the results, and you can have a much faster batch release. And while I mentioned that biofluorescent particle counters may have problems with false positives, so in our case, it's a very, a record low false positive rate, less than 0.1%, which allows to really to make a more sustainable production with less waste, because you don't want to have all the time counts while it's not just the false positives and get away of your expensive batches. So quality, it's very important of analysis, sensitivity, and specificity to detect airborne microbes in the air. And what are the challenges that we faced when we entered to pharmaceutical market? As I said, our company was founded 11 years ago. And initially, we focused on outdoor environmental monitoring market. And when we started to apply our technology to pharmaceutical industry, we realized that it's very complex. And in particular, it is highly regulated. So you have to present technology to regulatory bodies like FDA, like European Medical Agency. And in order to validate these technologies, you have to follow multiple guidelines, and it's a lot of work. It's also a very highly competitive landscape. Of course, when we came with our solution, we are not the first. So this kind of technology exists. I think the first appeared in 90s even, and the first kind of technology was applied to a military market. And then I think in the beginning of 2000, it was tested first and applied to pharmaceutical industry. And of course, in order to get to this market, you need to be much better. So you really need to be, to have a much better performance in order to convince pharmaceutical industry. In terms of market, it's a very slow cycle, and in order to implement with new technology, it's very slow. What we faced also, that pharmaceutical industry, of course, they don't like actually startups. They want to work with established companies, And so you need to have really a lot of benefits. And in our case, to build this credibility, we have a very good technology, and we built the full, I would say, methodology of implementing and validating of this type of instruments, where we built the full microbiological testing facility to do this validation certifications. And it's important to have a very strong supply chain in order to get to this pharmaceutical market. To bit of just like personal story. So actually, this technology that we are working on has been started in 2007. So first at the University of Geneva, Switzerland, and here on the left you can see our first device. Actually, it was has been developed to detect airborne bacteria in the air. And the first application was actually our professor at the University of Geneva said, okay, we have a project to study climate change, and you embark into a solar panel boat to cross Atlantic Ocean and to measure like phytoplankton and to see how marine aerosols influence Gulf Stream. So, and this device was placed in this boat, crossed from south of France, went to Miami, New York, and then across Atlantic Ocean and come back for a few months. And we measured already aerosols. And when some pharmaceutical companies asking us, is your instrument stable into vibrations of isolators? I can say, we tested this technology even on the boat. And yeah. And then in 2014, we were incorporated. And this actually the first instruments that were built for outdoor environmental monitoring market in a very small space in the Geneva incubator to target actually pollen detection. And we had nothing. We started with zero. We only had a 5 square meter space. And we knew we had a friend who was a Miss Haute-Savoie, Miss France. And we did it in some nice publicity. We published in meteorological journals just to have more attention to our technology. Of course, this was not, the most important, but at least our product was well noticed. And then so we really became a leader in real-time aerosol monitoring outdoor. We had a system installed even in Antarctica, in Amazonia forest, in all the crazy places. And in 2019, we applied this technology to pharmaceutical industry because we had a lot of requests for this technology. We then tested in aerospace, food, cosmetics. We also partnered. We know that you cannot just to address such complex market alone. So we partnered with a world leader in microbial sampling techniques, MBV. This company for MIS, for example, 100. And then we received a big grant from Swiss Confederation as a part of Horizon 2020. Actually to commercialize our instrument to pharmaceutical industry, and this was also allowed us to build the full large-scale microbiological testing facility where each of our instruments is tested on real microbes. And last year, we started the global sales of our product, Rapid C+. And today we're a company which has a headquarter in Geneva in Switzerland, where our R&D and sales and marketing are based. And our manufacturing and testing facilities is based in France. It's a very nice city, Annecy. It's just half an hour from Geneva, but we have 2 companies spread there. Just a bit of a practical side from Lara's presentation. What is it launching an innovative company in Switzerland? I think it's very close to Germany. It's here in Switzerland. It's very easy to incorporate a company. It's not much work on the documentation side. However, it takes a lot of time, money, specifically to get like a initial funding, like a seed round. It takes absolutely the same time and energy to get rounds A and B. And when you have investors that willing to invest in your company, it's like I don't know, it's like a banker who wants to see all your accounts. It's a very, like, say, accountant mindset of investors. It's very difficult, and you cannot do anything if you don't have an IP. So you need to have as much possible patents, trademarks covering all the important countries. However, Swissmade is very valuable, because if you can, your company make sales and I mean exist more than 10 years, I can say it's a very, very good companies, because all companies that I know that started with us are so much technological. So, and yeah, even you see the trends like automated vehicles in the, I mean, when we started, some digital products, they don't exist anymore, these companies. Why we've selected Switzerland? Of course, as a PhD in physics at the University of Geneva, we had all the possibilities to go to the United States, to other countries. And it's, of course, it was very, very much inspiring to see American startups and our friends in Silicon Valley who started business in IT. However, in Switzerland, we saw that we understood that it's very complex in terms of a mindset of people, about it's much slower, what everything happens. However, there is a very strong science and technology. We had a support from local incubators, from local government. You can get any advice what you can, but don't get money. However, we had first investors in Geneva that were really willing to support local industry in Geneva. As you know, I don't know if you visited Geneva, you can find a lot of industry in watch manufacturing, like Rolex, Vacheron Constantin, Piaget, and there are not much of tech industry, and there are people that really want to support this industrial revolution, technological companies here, and we are one of the success company in this region. The challenges is, as I said, it's very difficult to get money, and investors has also the mindset, if someone invests in your company, especially, for example, I don't know, some famous investor of venture capital in the United States, then local investors, of course, they will be happy to invest. And of course, it's a very high cost of living and manpower. What are the lessons learned? So, the right time is important when you address the market. We couldn't apply our technology when we knew that our competitors were already on the market in pharmaceutical industry. We couldn't apply our technology already in 2014 because we were not ready. As I said, pharmaceutical industry wants to work with established companies. So we went there when we were ready, and we were ready to supply our solutions and and to provide the best experience. You need to be find a right balance between patience and proactive approach. As the industry is very slow, so you need to be patient. The team is the most important asset because now, as we started now it's the team that makes the main job. And the full, our company culture is science, it's technologists who want to provide the best solution, because we are also consumers of pharmaceutical industry. So we want that our kids have the best medicine possible. So, and of course, you have to be ambitious. You need to make goals, but you need to take small steps towards them. And it was important. It was very important to define the product together with the end user. Of course, we don't want to limit to pharmaceutical industry. As I said, environmental monitoring is important also in other, in cosmetics, in food, beverage, aerospace, and health. In hospitals, we don't want to have nosocomial infections, while in, for example, in the surgical rooms or in the commercial centers, just remembering COVID. And we know that our technology will be also successful in less regulated industries. And I think our instrument will be installed in some of the ships to go to the Mars or to other scientific expeditions. So I think I stopped my presentation. I'm happy to have any questions.
Thank you very much. Those were absolutely great presentations, and I think we all learned a lot today. So thank you. I want to start with the first question, which is for Svetlana. Did you consider industry cooperation to overcome the risk for companies to buy equipment from a startup?
So that we to overcome risk to buy equipment from startups. Can you just repeat?
Did you consider industry cooperation to overcome the risk for companies to buy equipment from a startup?
I mean, we think that partnership cooperation is very important. That's why, I mean, we cooperated with some of the companies mentioned during the slides. I think, I mean, you need to consider startups because it's the future. It's something the driving force of innovation, and of course, you need to consider all the risks behind.
Yeah, I think it's the question is targeting more. How did you make sure that you can actually market your product? You know, the perception of, you know, when you buy something, you want it from an established brand, you know, that has some stability to it as well. So
yeah. Yes,
risk
as we manufacturing company, yes, we have to make sure that our suppliers, I mean, all our suppliers, for example, is a huge, I mean, multinational companies. And we, as we are manufacturer, we don't want to take risk, of course. I mean, I would say we take position of pharmaceutical companies. We don't want to take risk if a supplier disappears one day.
All right. Here's one for Bianca. How did you manage to onboard the first employees? Does biotech need certain skills? How did you see any barriers?
Yeah, we had the big advantage that there was a former company in the back. So we had nearly 50% from our personnel already there and took them over to the next company. So for sure, that makes it much easier than to get a new person. And yeah, that was the main reason. And fortunately, people like to work here. That also makes it easier. They talk to each other, they talk to other companies they came from, and that's the way it worked for us. So we are in a very lucky position. We had approximately 100 people right now, and we don't need to set costs in their receiving personnel. So it worked for pretty well for us.
Fantastic. Did you have any specific roles where you had, you know, challenges finding the right talent? Did you, you know, struggle with specific skills? You mentioned you had 4 QPs, which, yes, it seems a lot like for a small company. No trouble finding talent at all. That's what I take from you.
Yeah, we had no trouble for that. We had for sure to do a lot of training because let's have a look of the RoboCell. So it's absolutely new system, so nobody knows it right now. There's no experienced personnel trained on the RoboCell. We have to do that with our own personnel, and we had a lot of time, or we spent a lot of time in training our personnel correct, because the quality is our main issue. We as a CDMO are the focus on every company which wants to work with us, and therefore we set really a lot of time in training our operators. We do it right now.
Great, thank you. This next one is for Lara. It goes, what could be done better in the different regions as the US and Germany to increase the success for startups? I guess this is about, you know, strategies or advice that you can provide to anyone starting up a company in either of those markets.
I think it really depends on the market the startup is in, really. But a big part, I'd say, is just strengthening local support ecosystems. For example, the whole mentorship culture, just to have mentors locally, or to have more mentors, especially in Germany, because the US has more hubs where there are already a lot of mentors which can really benefit to the new startups and really can help them and make it more time efficient, just to bring them to Germany, or to bring more to Germany, and in the United States also in regions that are not like the Silicon Valley and are more rural, to just have some of them also there. and also like tax incentives, maybe just to be a more to make them better so that investors see a better opportunity to invest in startups, kind of in that direction, I would say.
Thank you. Here's another one, excuse me, for Bianca. What would you wish from organizations like the PDA to get more visibility and more support?
I think the support it's a passive support. So you had the possibility to join the PDA. You have the possibility to get the technical reports, which are pretty good. So we use them there very often in our company. And what may be interesting is a more cost-efficient way to get more people there. So the costs for a startup as us, where we are not producing that much and not earning that much money, but we have to train the people right now. So it may be interesting to have a possibility for startup or new companies to join the events, the conferences, with a little less cost, efficient way.
Yeah, we'll be happy to bring that back to PDA, but one thing I can offer you is always, if you volunteer to take on some activities.
I do that all the time.
So there you go. That's a good strategy already.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's my personal strategy, and that's why I mentioned to bring more people from my company there. So when 20 people from PSM do some presentations, it may look a little bit strange.
All right. This one is for Svetlana. As you are based in Switzerland, did you use the opportunity to talk with the Swissmedic as they offer advisory meetings?
It's very funny. Yeah. Well, we talked with Swissmedic, for example, the European Medical Agency. As a Swiss even company supplier, Swissmedic don't talk directly to suppliers of pharmaceutical industry. So the request to have a meeting with the Swissmedic has to be done from pharmaceutical company.
And did you have a chance to organize such a meeting?
Yes.
With one
We
of your
talked, of
customers?
course. Yes. I mean, it's just a difference, I would say, between Switzerland or I don't know, Germany and United States, that a supplier of pharmaceutical industry can get much easier meeting with FDA, for example, than I would say just directly meeting with a Swissmedic or any local authorities.
Thank you. Next one is for Laura. It's quite a long one. I'll try to summarize it. The question is around other markets in Europe. You specifically compared Germany to the US. You had a touch of Switzerland also included, which I found very, very interesting and insightful. The question is around whether you also had a chance to compare it to other markets in Europe, and if any other market is somewhat similar to maybe the US, or maybe would support startups even more.
Okay, so thank you for the question. I actually didn't include any other EU countries in my bachelor thesis because I focused on Germany and the US. But to anyone listening who wants to make or who wants to see a comparison, I really recommend looking up the Hofstede Cultural Dimension. They have an online website. I didn't know that during my bachelor thesis, so I went to the library and borrowed their book and read through all the pages to somehow get an overview over everything. But they have an online website, and there you can just type in the different countries you want to see, and then they plot you a chart, which I already did. That's also the chart you see in my presentation, and then you can directly compare the differences, and maybe then you see some of the countries who are more similar to the US than Germany might be. So I really recommend it. I think that's really interesting. We also did that during my one of my master's course last semester, because this was in another context, and we compared Sweden, Spain, and I think China. And we also did that through the Hofstede Cultural Dimension online website.
Well, it's great to know there are many resources nowadays that people can use when they think about starting a company.
Mm.
Wonderful. Bianca, this one's for you. Did you perform, besides a market analysis, also a business risk analysis before establishing the company? And if yes, what were the risks you identified founding a company in biotech in Germany?
Yeah, the risk is for sure to get known. So that was one of, as we had the investors on our side, so the financial topic was no issue from the beginning on. So that's the major step, I think, because it costs a lot. This were only the 45 million were only investments, so I had to pay the personnel every month. So that is for sure the biggest risk. The next step is to get known, and that they have the trust, that the big pharmaceutical companies have the trust in you, that you will receive your manufacturing license. So we had the first contracts with really big pharmaceutical companies without any manufacturing license. So it was all based on trust. And I think that is a huge risk. They have to trust you. You have to assure that you have the quality in-house, the thinking, the knowledge, and yeah, I think that was the biggest risk beside the other ones.
I mean, we all know trust does not come for free, right? So how did you manage to build that trust? Was it all based on the previous company, or did you have, other strategies to build that trust with your future customers? And what would you have done differently if you wouldn't have had the previous company to build up?
We had the previous company, so part of them, so they changed to this side with us. So we had one, but they were smaller. The big companies for the big lines we received new, and they also weren't in the last company. I think it's doing some presentation at PDA. ISPE is also part of the marketing of the company, which assures the people they have the knowledge, they talk to us. So that is also really a big step, the networking there. I talked a lot at the conferences with other pharmaceutical companies, and that's a really good point for sure. The homepage should look like you know what you're doing. And we did that in the very early stages.
It's great to hear. Thank you. We have one comment question, which is around the gloveless robotic isolator. It's great to see it. How much automated are your processes around the isolator? Are there any missing technologies, in your opinion, to automate more of your production process, also with respect to Annex 1?
There are for sure possibilities to automate more around the isolator. So the isolator is for sure fully automated because it has no gloves, and you have no possibility for some kind of human intervention. So that works pretty well so far. The processes around are mainly manually, so we have to put a tank onto the line and do that manually. But that is maybe a topic from a CDMO because we have to change our products. So we only use single-use parts. We don't have fixed pipes for that, and that may be different in a company which only produces one product. So there is a much bigger need to full automatization than it is in our case, because we have to change a lot of things very often, and therefore only you have to think if it is worth it or not, and does it make sense or not. And in some parts, especially for CDMO, that is harder to do. But we automated we have all our equipment in our internal network so that we can get the electronic batch report, and we did a lot of around the isolator line to get Annex 1 compliant. The whole building is Annex 1 compliant, as we had the advantage that the drafts were already out within our construction phase. So we had a lot of deep looks in the Annex 1.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? Do you still have any challenges with the Annex 1 requirements and your contamination control strategy?
As I visited a lot of workshops for the contamination control strategy, also was the table leader of one of the first in 2023, I think 2022, 2023 in Bethesda. There I had a lot of, also from the PDA, I had a lot of talks with the FDA inspectors, so, and also with the former MHA inspector, that I talked a lot about this, and we included that at very, very early stages. So before the production was fully built, we had already parts of our contamination control strategy. Therefore, we had, for example, the CRAMs from the beginning of the construction phase. For example, for the contamination control strategy, so that you received your house CRAMs in a very early stage. And yeah, that was networking, knowledge sharing was really good regarding that additional information that's already inside the annex.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't want to put you on the spot. It's just we spent the last like 3-4 days talking a lot about contamination control strategies. And I saw you are somewhat in an advantage there, you know, when you start up basically a new process rather than having an ancient or old legacy process, if you will, that needs to be brought up to speed. That is definitely more challenging. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Svetlana, can I ask you if, you know, when you started your company and you wanted to make sure that your technology is known as you're solving a problem for the industry, right? Did you also use industry associations, you know, to boost your visibility to market your product as well?
Yes, of course we did. In pharmaceutical industry, of course, it's ISPE to PDA, not yet, to be honest. But we initially we started to be visible. For example, our first market was environmental monitoring outdoor, as we are based in Geneva. In Geneva, we have World Meteorological Organization, World Health Organization. So we approached them, and I think we won some prize in the World Meteorological Organization for the best technology in engineering in environmental monitoring for outdoor. At that time, it was detection of allergens in the air. And then for example, for pharmaceutical industry, for the association we presented, I mean, we started to be visible in main exhibitions through German associations, networks, in Switzerland, for example, Swiss clean room communities in the German part of Switzerland, A3P, what else? ISP on the presentations, conferences. So yeah, we participated a lot. We did a lot of marketing and more, I would say, scientific technological marketing in this space. To be so that our company is known and that our products also are known.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the room?
Hello, I'm Hironori Uchai from Japan, and I'm interested in for RapidC. So the RapidC is very unique system. Because of combination of the total particle and viable count and classical settle plate combination is very very interesting for me. So typical isolator system. So the how many RapidC set the in the typical isolator machine?
Yeah.
How many?
So, for example, well, it's now RapidC Plus instrument. So the positions of it's like a sampling points to replace traditional methods. So I would say it's more from isolator providers to say what are the important sampling points where these instruments will be integrated. But the particularity of this instrument is that you do this environmental monitoring, I mean, total particle counts, viable particle counts outside of the grade A area. So all the measurements are outside in a aseptic way. So even the traditional method that we have implemented, it is aseptic. So you have even these counts on CFU on agar plates that are aseptic. So you don't have a risk of contamination of inside of isolator.
I see. Thank you. So in future, so will you expand the market for the Japan?
Yes, actually, we already. I mean, we have a request. I mean, from I would say all main continents for this product. We launched actually last year this product. So we started. I would say the first product appeared in 2020, 5 years ago. And then when we started working on the validation of this product, so it took us 5 years actually to validate, we came up with a completely, and when Annex 1 came into force, and then we had a request when we approached the regulators. They said, okay, you come to pharmaceutical companies and ask what are the, for example, the needs in order to do this validation. And basically we come up with completely, I mean, innovative products, so Rapid C+ that actually replies to the needs of pharmaceutical industry, to the regulator needs of Annex 1. And so we launched them 1 year ago, and of course we are interested in deploying to all the countries globally actually.
Thank you. So if possible, can I have your presentation?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Wonderful. That brings us pretty much to the end of our slides. Thank you very much. And I can answer your last question. Yes, you will have access to the presentation. You will also have access to our recording of the session today. So this will be available to everyone who participated online. We will send out an email to everyone in the room. You might want to take a photograph. Yeah, perfect. Of this link. This is the link to our PDA DACH chapter website. You can also navigate through pda.org, hit the button on chapters, and then navigate to the DACH chapter. We will share the materials there, the presentation and the recording. And this pretty much wraps up our webinar today. I want to thank our speakers. Fantastic topics, fantastic presentations. Thanks for taking the time to prepare and share this with us. Thanks to everybody in the room for visiting. This is your applause.
Thank you.
And with that,
Thank you.
we'll see you next time. Thanks
you.
a lot.